First of all, whose verse or whose version of this do you like better? Would you listen to this track the same way if it wasn't from Drake? Do you think it's better if it comes from Vori? You know, me personally, I've heard this isn't my first rodeo when it comes to Drake and writing allegations and reference tracks being exposed and leaked, and the culture shock that was Meek Mill versus Drake when the reference track for, I don't know which track it was, I forget, but one of the tracks off If You're Reading This Is Too Late as a reference track being dropped and exposed, quote unquote, and people not understanding the concept of a reference track or accredited contribution. The issue I think I have with the whole reference track thing is you never fully know what the contributions that are taken from the reference track are, you know? When you see a credited feature, and I think that's the biggest defense that Drake has for him in regards to this, in regards to Quentin Miller's contributions to Tim Bands, the reference track that he did. I think the biggest defense that Drake has is that these are credited features. They were listed. There's a credit for Quentin Miller. There's a credit for Vori. If you look up the Mob Tie song, it's not hidden. It's not secret. But people don't know what the contributions are. They don't know how much of the track was written by this person, how much of the flows were given to you by this person, how much, you know, what is it that we give in terms of originality to the actual artist that has his name on the song. When you go and listen to it on streaming platforms and on YouTube, you don't see the features, you know what I'm saying? And depending on how much the contribution is, how much or how important is it to list out that level of contribution in a way that people can't look at years from now and be like, oh, I'm trying to expose you because this person actually is behind the entire creative process for this particular song. I don't know what Vori did, to be honest with you. I don't know if Drake had already written these lyrics out and had Vori perform them so he could know how to flow on the track. I don't know anything really. And it's just hard to come to these conclusions and indefinite ideas of what happened and what didn't happen based off of a track that just ended up getting released. There's another one that people were talking about, the Party Next Door one for Ratchet Happy Birthday, but that's been out for a long time. I get that it's funny now because of the whole Kendrick back and forth, but realistically speaking, if you're going to ask me, I don't have a problem with people using reference tracks. I know that there's this other stigma of everything got to be done by the artist who's doing it, and you can't call yourself the greatest of all time if you have help or if you have contributions. But I mean, that's generally where the best hip hop is made, from people that don't necessarily do it by themselves all the time. I would say or argue that it's much harder for you to be the greatest artist that you can be without contributors, without help, without assistance. I don't think it's wise at all for any musician to take this one man army approach to every record when you could be making potentially way better music. And I think you certainly still can say that you are one of the best, even if you have contributors and you're open about it. I'm not a Drake, stan or fan right now, but at the end of the day, I don't get what this does overall to the history of J. Cole. I mean, the history of J. Cole, the history of Drake. I don't get what that does. People saying that Kanye's done it before, and he never called himself the best. Well, yes, the fuck he did. Kanye would religiously call himself the best. Kanye would religiously say that I'm one of the best out and call himself a pretty good MC, despite the fact that he had people writing for him. Consequence being one of his biggest collaborators. Another one being, I'm forgetting his name. The first time, it won't be the last time. And the outrage over it at this stage in hip hop is just kind of crazy to me. Like, I want to be on the whole, yeah, this is insane. Never would have thought that this would have ever happened. But, I mean, I understand why it's news, because there's already the campaign against Drake right now. So any little additional speck that people can attach themselves to and say, oh, here's another L. Yeah, I guess. But I'm not like, this is what's been holding hip hop back in terms of traditional versions of it for so long, and keeping it uninventive and keeping people from moving forward. The issue that I really have with Drake isn't necessarily that he's got reference tracks or that he has collaborators. The issue that I have with Drake is that you are willing to work with people and risk the public outrage of you not potentially contributing 100% of your own being to your songs, and you still make the shit that you make. You still put out the weak ass music that you put out despite having collaborators, despite having people to converse with, despite having people to bounce ideas off of. You are not above working with people at all. And I think that's great. But how the fuck do you still make ass? And you are working with this many people. You got people, and don't get me wrong, Mob Ties is a great track. It's a really fun track. It's honestly one of the best records, or one of the reasons I think Scorpion is even justifiable at all. But beyond that point, it's like, do you hold back from collaborating with people due to some random motivation that you get to work on some records, or what? Because I just feel like if you have access to this many people and you work with this many people and you're willing to go out there and put their name on your song and credit them for XYZ, how is your music still so lowest common denominator, low effort? I don't get that. And you could say, honestly, Nevermind is another indication of that, of Drake having the ability to be the most resourceful artist and put together the best music ever, and refusing to do so because he just stays at the surface and refuses to go any deeper, to go dig for a version of himself that I think would be respectable from an artistic point of view and not just from a business point of view. But he just doesn't. But again, I do still think that the biggest issue when it comes to the reference track leak culture is we'd never know what contributions the person who's making the reference track actually have. We don't know if Drake wrote this out for Vori and had him perform it so he could see how to flow on the song. We don't know if Vori wrote those lines and Drake was the one who originally did the flow and had him perform it for him. It's just so much shit that isn't known, and we're listening to a track where someone's rapping, you hear someone else rapping, you don't know how they got to those bars. You don't know how they got to that destination. You know what I'm saying? Academic said Vori wrote it. Who's to verify that? Yeah, I need verification on that. On a verification on like Vori writing what we just listened to. What do I think about the Kendrick reference track for a lot of Keem's music? I don't care about that because Keem has come out just making fun music. Like that's been his thing from the very beginning. And even if Keem was calling himself one of the best, I still don't know what contributions that he's making in those rooms. Hearing a reference track is not enough for me to look at a rapper and say, oh, they're not creative and they don't do any of the work that makes the music the music. I know there's this idea that you can't call yourself the best rapper if you have a reference track made for you, but like I don't get where that comes from when there's no information known. Like even if you listen to the Kendrick reference tracks, like how much of it is written by Kendrick, how much of it is directed, how much of it is Kendrick Lamar? What am I to extrapolate from that when I'm just hearing a track with zero context, a reference track with no context, and I'm not in the studio? What do I get? I don't think somebody's going to look at the artist that's making that if they're reasonable and come to the conclusion that they can't view this artist in the same. There's other reasons I feel like to dislike Drake as a rapper and the narratives that he's put out there and the way he portrays himself. I think those are valid reasons to dislike his music and him versus, no, I can't listen to him as one of the best MCs because he has reference tracks. And I have zero idea what, like how those reference tracks came about. And what his contributions were prior to the reference track being made, especially when it's credited. And I maintain that stance for any artist. It does, because if you're an artist, you should make your own art and not copy it, basically. Right, but what evidence or proof do you have of him copying anything? What parts of that reference track can you verify are or are not Drake? And what ultimately ended up being on the cutting room floor and what ended up being thrown out and what conversations were had leading up into the track itself and who the collaborators were. Like once you have that information, then you can have that conversation. But what are you're extrapolating a bunch of nothing off of a reference track that you have released with no context. Bro, you putting DJ Academic said, what the fuck did that mean? I guess Drake isn't the rapper I thought he was. Who the fuck did I think Drake was? Who has Drake proven himself to be over the last 5 years musically? An insecure kind of loser who's afraid to take off the clothes that he was wearing when he was in his 20s so that he still appears as if he's the same age as back then so he can keep rapping about the same shit he's been rapping about. Like, I guess if he had proven himself to be someone else artistically, I might be more disappointed. But as it stands, it's nothing outside of the lens of what I expected him to be. And so him having a reference track from 2018 that was partly made by an abuser, like, who gives a fuck? My fault. Because that's really not relevant here. But at the end of the day, it's like, what? Who cares? Not even who cares on the sense that, like, integrity in writing doesn't matter. It does. But I don't know who wrote shit.
12 writers in the studio that don't add up to Drake. That's why I was interested when we heard 30 Hours, because Drake wrote that for me. I sent him like, boom, here I got like this many ideas. Like the line I had, like, I was nervous to do Victoria's Secret show until I pictured everybody with no clothes. Right? Was like a line I had, and like
that's like a stripper line.
Yeah, like, yeah. But you don't think about it, it's like you could be nervous to do like a speech and they say picture everybody naked. So we flipped it, like I was nervous to do Victoria's Secret until I pictured everybody naked. And I sent it to Drake, and Drake took it and barred it out and wrote the whole rap. You understand like how much easier my life would be if Drake would just like write my raps for me? You know what I'm saying? I'm sure everyone wish they had that luxury, but
Okay, and so from that point, we can even go and we can take that even further and be like, you know what? How do we even know that Drake wrote what Kanye sent him? Kanye could have sent him that line, but we don't know if Drake wrote the line that he sent back. He could have had a ghostwriter writing for it. We don't know. All I know is Kanye sent Drake lines, and Drake extrapolated a whole other scheme about it and sent it back to him, and he used it for his song. That's what I know. We don't know what other filters it went through before it went back to Kanye. We just know that it was sent to Drake and Drake sent it back. Why be upset? Why is this treated like an exposed campaign? Especially when it's credited. It's right there. Just read. Just look at the shit. At this point, if y'all like any song that's from hip hop, from rap music, just Wikipedia this shit or look it up and say, you know what, who's credited. That way, when shit like this happen in the future, you're not surprised. That's what you're going to have to do to every song that you like, if this means that much to you. I don't care. The best music in the world needs collaboration. I think going into the future, if you're a musician, trying to go this one-man army route is not wise and it's not smart, creatively speaking. I just don't think that's wise. Doing everything by yourself or alone, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Especially with something that has as many subgenres as hip hop does right now. You need to be open-minded. Now, if you decide to go to the one-man army approach, by all means, take that route. But you're missing out on a lot of other opportunities, I feel like. Work with people. There's nothing wrong with that. If they don't claim to be the best, I don't really care. What does that matter? Because everybody has said it. Kanye has said it, and I still believe he's one of the best, or used to be one of the best. Mad people have said it, that if I found out they had collaborators and they were credited this whole time, I wouldn't give a shit. I wouldn't care. It actually matters a lot. I'm saying, why does it matter? I could see someone saying, I'm the realest or most authentic, and I found out your life story was being written by someone else. I would take big issue with that. If I found out that your whole persona and your backstory was being written by somebody else, I would take issue with that. But there's too many things that I don't know to make this point that you can no longer be one of the best MCs because you've had people collaborate with you on records. People are so like infatuated with trying to be black and white about something like that, and they don't know shit about the behind the scenes process of what it took to write the person's music. They genuinely don't know. It's like PEDs in sports. You shouldn't be you shouldn't be in certain combos. No, it's not like PEDs in sports, because there are performance enhancing drugs that are banned. There are statistics and standards that you have to stick to compete. And if they find out that you are using these drugs and enhancements, you will be kicked out. But in music, something as open-minded as music, you should use all tools that are within your arsenal. I'm confused on what this has to be standard created for hip hop has been from people that don't make hip hop, that don't make music. I'm not even saying it like that. Don't take that the wrong way. I'm not saying that you got to make music to have a take on the music. I'm saying that the standard has been created by fans generally and adhered to by the people that are making the music.